There was a woman who spoke some years ago at the Waldorf Astoria in New York for the Prevention of Blindness Society, and she told her audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, as many of you are aware, I suffered a degenerative disease in my eyes when I was quite young, as a result of which I lost most of my eyesight. Nevertheless, I went on to achieve my doctorate in psychology. I got married. I had 4 children. Then one day I heard about a certain doctor in Italy who was dealing with a particular degenerative eye disease and able to restore significant eyesight in a number of candidates who might suffer from that particular disease. And a friend of mine suggested I submit my paperwork. Imagine," she said, "if you've managed to accomplish all that you did in your current situation, if you can have your eyesight restored, you become an ultimate powerhouse." As many of you know, she continued to tell her audience, "I ultimately submitted my paperwork, I was a candidate, I went out to have the surgery, and today I am able to see far better than ever before." What many of you may not, however, know is that within 4 years of having this surgery, I suffered a nervous breakdown, I struggled in my work, and I became estranged from my family. Then she looked to her audience and she said, "Why?" She let the question linger for a few moments, and then she answered, "Because when I was living in the darkness, I was always yearning for the light. I just didn't know how to live in that light." This week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and a lot of different synagogues are getting on board to offer their support for JAMI, that wonderful institution that does so much for the benefit of those in the Jewish community that struggle with different parts of mental health. And I think it's important to share a few thoughts about that. For far too long, mental health was regarded as a taboo subject. Those who grappled with an inner darkness didn't know how to live in the light, and they were by and large stigmatized by society, thus preventing all kinds of open talk, all kinds of education, and really any proper professional care. I mean, let's face it, physical illness would always be seen as more acceptable because it's visible and therefore perceived as real. Mental illness is internal, it's less discernible, and consequently garners less support, less sympathy, and less sensitivity from people. You know, I once made a startling observation when having the misfortune of having to walk with this ostentatious sling on my arm. I noted how buses slowed down to let me get on, cars stopped to enable me to cross the street, and people generally were allowing me to pass, being very kind and so forth, others inquiring as to my well-being. But then I wondered about the many who don't wear the badge of their pain on their sleeve. What about the many that may be hurting on the inside where one cannot readily recognize the depth of their wound? External behavioral manifestations may not be telling the whole story. When we see someone who is acting out of character, do we pause long enough to consider that perhaps there may be something else going on, some emotional difficulty? Or are we indifferent to looking a little deeper? This week we also read the story of the exodus of the Jews from Egypt, and the Torah enumerates in detail the final of the 3 plagues as they transpired. One of those plagues, of course, is famously known as the plague of darkness. In the words of the Torah, "There was thick darkness over the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. No man could see his brother, nor could any person even rise from his place for 3 days. And to the children of Israel there was light in all their dwellings." There are 2 distinctions to be noted in particular regarding this plague over any of the others. The first is that it was split into 2 parts. During the initial 3 days, no man could see his brother, and during the subsequent 3 days, no man could rise from his place. That is the debilitating nature of mental illness. It begins with a basic struggle, grappling against the darkness within. With a lack of awareness, and when not treated properly, it can become utterly debilitating and immobilizing. We should remember that even though darkness does not appear in our society as a physical plague, it is still very much present and very much influential. The second difference is that in regard to all the other plagues, the Torah mentions only how they affected the Egyptians. It doesn't stress how the Jews may or may not have been impacted, whereas in this instance, The verse also deliberately highlights how to the children of Israel there was light. What is the significance in this? Well, light motivates to action. The bright environment that is created by light allows people to rise above their self-centered tendencies and truly empathize with others. So maybe the emphasis on the fact that the children of Israel had light is essentially a call to action to all of us to ensure that we are more attuned to the reality of that plague of darkness, be it in ourselves or in others. Again, the world today is actually so much more aware of mental health, hence there is this Mental Health Week. The sterling work of JAMI and other such like organizations encourage us to know that it is okay to talk about things. It's okay to admit when you need someone to just listen. Mental health is no longer a taboo subject. It needs continuous attention, and it needs to be spoken about, and it needs to be addressed much more openly. The first thing God created in His world was light, and He saw that it was good. That remains our ongoing challenge, to reach out to those who for one reason or another are walking in darkness, yearning for the light, and to be more aware ourselves, and to enable them to learn how to live in that light. Shabbat Shalom.